This might sound like one of those risky government moves you've heard about, the kind where you're told to review your Social Security, and suddenly you worry you could lose money instead of gain it. I understand that fear. In fact, a lot of retirees right now are saying the same thing. They're asking, if I call Social Security and ask for a review, am I opening a door I shouldn't open? Because let's be honest, it feels safer to leave things alone. If your check is coming in every month, even if it feels a little low, at least it's steady. But here's the truth that most people are not being told clearly. There is a specific type of review process, often triggered by requesting your full earnings and payment history, that has helped some retirees discover missing income credits, calculation errors, or overlooked adjustments. And in certain cases, it has led to an increase in their monthly benefit. Not for everyone, not automatically, but enough that you should at least understand it. So today, I want to walk you through this calmly and clearly, like we're sitting at a table together, so you know exactly what this is, how it works, and whether it's something you should even consider. And if you find these kinds of breakdowns helpful, just consider subscribing. I keep things simple, real, and focused on what actually matters for your money. Now let's start with the concern that's spreading right now. A lot of retirees are hearing this advice. Call Social Security. Ask for an audit. Request your payment history to be reviewed. And immediately, red flags go up. Because you're thinking, why would I ask them to look at my account again? What if they find something and reduce my check? What if this triggers a problem? That concern is valid. And I'm glad you're thinking that way, because you should never take action blindly when it comes to your benefits. But here's where many people get confused. When someone says audit, it sounds like an investigation, like something negative. In reality, what they're referring to is usually a review of your earnings record and benefit calculation. That's very different from a fraud investigation or penalty review. Let me explain what this actually means. Your Social Security benefit is based on your lifetime earnings. Specifically, your highest 35 years of work, adjusted for inflation. The Social Security Administration uses that data to calculate what's called your primary insurance amount. That's the base of your monthly check. Now here's the issue. That calculation depends entirely on the accuracy of your recorded earnings over decades. We're talking about work history going back 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. And believe it or not, errors can happen. Wages might not have been reported correctly. A job might be missing. Self-employment income might not have been fully credited. Name changes, employer reporting mistakes, or simple data issues can affect the record. And if those numbers are off, even slightly, your monthly benefit could be lower than it should be. Now I want to be very clear here. This does not mean everyone has an error. Most people's records are correct, but some are not. And that's where this idea of requesting a review comes in. Let me give you a simple example. There's a retiree named Linda in Ohio. She worked part-time for several years in her 50s while also caring for her husband. When she applied for Social Security, her benefit was calculated based on the earnings on file. Years later, she requested her earnings record. She noticed that 2 years of income from a small employer were missing. Those weren't huge years, but they replaced 2 zero-income years in her 35-year calculation. After correction, her monthly benefit increased. Not dramatically, but enough to make a difference over time. That's the kind of situation we're talking about. Now let's talk about what actually happens behind the scenes when you contact Social Security and ask about your record. You are not triggering a penalty review. You are asking for information. You can request your earnings history. You can ask how your benefit was calculated. And if something looks incorrect, you can ask about correcting it. This is where many people feel unsure. They don't know what to say. They don't want to sound confused. So they avoid the call altogether. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You can simply say, I'd like to review my earnings record and understand how my benefit was calculated. That's it. You're not accusing anyone of a mistake. You're not requesting a risky action. You're asking for clarity. And that's your right. Now let's talk about timing, because this matters more than people realize. Social Security payments follow a schedule based on your birth date. If you were born between the 1st and 10th, your payment usually arrives on the 2nd Wednesday of the month. Between the 11th and 20th, 3rd Wednesday. Between the 21st and 31st, 4th Wednesday. SSI payments are typically sent on the 1st of the month. So if your check arrives like clockwork, that's good. But consistency does not always mean accuracy. You could be receiving a stable payment that is slightly lower than it should be. And over time, That difference adds up. Even an extra $50 a month is $600 a year. Over 10 years, that's $6,000. Now let's talk about something else that plays into this. COLA adjustments. Every year, Social Security applies a cost of living adjustment. For example, recent COLA increases have been around 3% in some years, higher in others. But here's the key point. COLA is applied to your existing benefit amount. So if your base benefit is lower than it should be, your COLA increases are also lower than they should be. That means the impact compounds over time. This is why even a small correction can matter. Now I want to address the fear directly. Can requesting a review reduce your benefit? In rare cases, if there was an overpayment or incorrect credit in your favor, it could lead to an adjustment. But this is not the typical outcome of simply reviewing your earnings record. Most reviews are informational. They either confirm everything is correct or identify something that can be corrected. The key is you are not automatically triggering a negative action by asking questions. Let me say that again clearly. Asking for your earnings record and understanding your benefit calculation is not the same as requesting a full investigation into your eligibility. Those are different processes, and this is where a lot of confusion comes from. Now let's talk about practical steps. Because I don't want to just explain this. I want you to know exactly what to do if you decide to look into it. Step 1. Gather your basic information. You'll want your Social Security number and ideally access to your Social Security account online. If you haven't created one, it's worth doing. It allows you to view your earnings history directly. Step 2. Review your earnings record. Look for missing years. Look for years where income seems unusually low compared to what you remember. You don't need to be perfect. Just look for anything that stands out. Step 3. If something looks off, contact Social Security. You can call or visit a local office if you prefer speaking to someone in person. Explain that you'd like to understand your record and ask about any discrepancies. Step 4. Provide documentation if needed. This might include old tax returns, W-2 forms, or employer records. Not everyone will need this, but it's helpful if you have it. Now let me give you another real lifestyle scenario. There's a man named Robert in Texas. He worked construction for decades. Some of his earlier work was for smaller contractors. When he checked his record, he noticed several years with very low reported income. After looking into it, he realized some employers hadn't reported correctly. He was able to submit documentation. His record was adjusted, and his monthly benefit increased modestly. Again, not life-changing overnight, but meaningful. Now here's something else you should understand. Social Security does not go back and automatically recheck everyone's record in detail. They rely on reported data. So if something was missed years ago, it may stay that way unless you bring it up. This is why awareness matters. Not panic, not fear, just awareness. Now let's talk briefly about SSI and SSDI recipients, because this applies a little differently. If you're receiving SSI, your benefit is based more on income and resources than lifetime earnings. So an earnings record review may not affect your payment the same way. But reviewing your payment history, making sure everything is accurate, that still matters. For SSDI recipients, your benefit is based on your work record, so accuracy there is also important. Now, before we move into the deeper details in the next part, I want to leave you with this simple thought. You are not doing anything wrong by asking questions about your own benefits. You worked for decades. You paid into the system. You earned the right to understand how your check is calculated. And if there's even a small chance that something could be corrected in your favor, it's worth at least taking a careful look. In the next part, we're going to go deeper. We'll talk about what kind of errors are most common, what documents actually help, what to say when you call so you feel confident, and how to avoid the real risks that some people don't talk about. Because yes, there are a few things you should be careful about, but once you understand them, you'll feel much more in control. Now that you understand what this so-called audit really is, a review of your earnings and payment history, the next question is simple. What kinds of mistakes are we actually looking for? Because if you don't know what to look for, you might review your record and miss something important. So let's go step by step. One of the most common issues is missing earnings. This usually happens with smaller employers, especially decades ago, where reporting systems weren't as consistent as they are today. You might have worked a job for a year or two, and when you check your record, it's just not there. Or the income is much lower than what you actually earned. This matters because Social Security uses your highest 35 years of earnings. If a year is missing, it might be counted as zero, and zeros pull your average down. Even replacing a zero with a modest income year can increase your benefit. Now here's another issue: incorrect earnings amounts. Sometimes the year is there, but the number is off. Maybe you earn $32,000, but the record shows $18,000. That difference can affect your overall calculation. Now you might be thinking, that was so long ago, how would I even prove it? And that's a fair concern. If you still have old tax returns, W-2 forms, or even bank records, those can help. But even if you don't, it's still worth asking questions. Because in some cases, the Social Security Administration can trace records internally. Now let's talk about something else that doesn't get enough attention: delayed retirement credits. If you delayed claiming Social Security past your full retirement age, your benefit increases. But in rare situations, people don't see the full credit applied correctly, especially if there were complications in their filing timeline. Reviewing your benefit breakdown can help confirm everything is applied properly. Now let's move into something very important, and this is where you need to be careful. Not every situation will result in an increase, and not every review should be rushed. This is where many people get confused. They hear that someone got an increase, and they immediately call without understanding their own situation. That's not the approach I recommend. Instead, take a calm, informed step. Review first, understand second, then act. Now let's talk about how this could affect your actual monthly check. Let's say your current benefit is $1,200 per month. After a correction, maybe it increases to $1,260. That's a $60 difference. That might not sound huge, but over a year, that's $720. Over 15 years, that's more than $10,000. And remember, COLA adjustments apply to that higher amount going forward. Now let's also talk about processing time, because this is where expectations need to be realistic. If you request a review or submit documentation, it does not happen overnight. It can take weeks, sometimes months, depending on the complexity. So this is not a quick fix. It's a long-term adjustment. Now here's something that many people don't realize. If a correction is made, you may also receive back pay. That depends on the situation and how far back the correction applies. But in some cases, adjustments can include retroactive benefits. Again, not guaranteed, but possible. Now let's talk about what to actually say when you contact Social Security, because I know this is where a lot of people feel uncomfortable. You don't need complicated language. You don't need to sound like an expert. You can simply say, I'd like to review my earnings record and understand how my Social Security benefit was calculated. I want to make sure everything is accurate. That's clear. That's reasonable. And that opens the conversation without creating confusion. If you notice something specific, you can add, I believe there may be a discrepancy in one of my work years, and I'd like to look into it. That's it. Now let's talk about something very important: protecting yourself. Because while this process can be helpful, you should always be cautious about who you're speaking to. Only contact official Social Security channels. Never respond to unsolicited calls or messages claiming they can increase your benefits. Those are often scams. The real process does not involve paying someone to review your record. You can do this yourself or directly with Social Security. Now let's bring this back to real life. Imagine a retiree named Carol in Florida. She's receiving $980 per month. She always assumed that was correct. One day, her neighbor mentions checking their earnings record. Carol logs into her account. She notices a 5-year gap in her 40s where income seems lower than expected. She calls Social Security. They review the record. She provides some documentation. Months later, her benefit increases to $1,040. That's $60 more per month. For Carol, that covers groceries for a week. That's real impact. Now I want to address one more concern that many seniors have. What if I make a mistake during this process? The answer is, you're not locked into anything just by asking questions. You're gathering information. You're understanding your own record. That's all. You're not signing away your benefits. You're not triggering penalties just by reviewing. Now let's talk briefly about budgeting, because this ties into everything. If your benefit increases, even slightly, that's an opportunity. You can use that extra amount to cover rising costs, utilities, groceries, medications. Or you can set aside a portion for emergencies. Even small increases can improve financial stability over time. Now let's summarize everything in the simplest possible way. There is no secret form that magically boosts your Social Security, but there is a process, reviewing your earnings and payment history, that can uncover errors or missed credits. Most people will find everything is correct. Some will find small issues. A few will see meaningful improvements. The key is, you don't know until you look. And looking does not mean risking everything. It means understanding. It means taking ownership of what you earned. So here's the takeaway I want you to remember. If you've never reviewed your earnings record, if you've ever felt your benefit seems lower than expected, if you had a regular work history, multiple employers, or self-employment, it may be worth taking a careful look. No pressure, no rush, just a simple review. And if everything is correct, you gain peace of mind. If something needs correction, you have the opportunity to fix it. Either way, you're in a better position than before. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you've ever checked your Social Security record, or if you're thinking about it now, I'd really like to hear from you. Let me know what state you're in and what your experience has been, because your story might help someone else take that first step with confidence. And remember, this is your benefit. You earned it. You have every right to understand it.